Alright, you guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Talks with Antoine. I know I was supposed to be back and doing this once a week. However, after I said that I wanted to come back and film once a week, all the material that I use basically went out on me, right? My lighting, um, then I had issues with my phone, had to take that back to Apple. So I end up ordering new lights for new lights for YouTube. I also added a mic, so hopefully that the video and audio quality is a lot better. And then eventually we're going to move to a camera. However, we need more subscribers. I need more viewers for me to continue to invest into this channel. Otherwise, we'll be doing this from the phone and this mic and these Ring cameras and this backlighting until then. But that's besides the point. As the video lays out below, or the title lays out below, I am here to check in with y'all, right? It's been 3 weeks since he's been not elected, but sworn in. So he is now your president. And I just want to check in with y'all. I want to check in with those who didn't vote for him and knew that this was a bad idea. Those who didn't vote at all because they just completely wanted to sit this cycle out, which is completely understandable too. There weren't it was it was voting for the less of two evils. And if you just wanted to say, hey, I have a choice to not vote, I have a choice to vote, and I have a choice to vote for what candidates I believe should lead the country, and you realized, hey, that none of them were prepared to do so, and you didn't vote, that's fine. I want to check in with y'all too. I wanted to check in with us specifically because every time this administration or these administrations that don't look like us make decisions, it affects us twice, right? Once from the front, once from behind. I wanted to check in on those who did vote for him and realize, oh shit, maybe this is not a good idea. Um, I'm not going to say this on camera because I want this to be monetized one day. But what's going on in the Middle East? And we all know, right? There was a group of individuals who were tearing her down, blaming her, but praising Trump just for him to say that he wants to annex the Gaza Strip. He wants to basically annex the Gaza Strip, kick all the Palestinians out, send them to other countries so that way they can have a better life and then rebuild. I mean, now that is a very manifest destiny uh approach that the United States has done before. And underneath this administration, I am completely certain that with Congress, he can do it again. Um, and we will do it again. Um, Jumping into him now, he wants to annex Greenland. Greenland is owned by Denmark. Denmark is a part of NATO. We're also a part of NATO. Why are we threatening another NATO country saying that we want to annex their fucking their fucking territory, right? We are putting tariffs on our closest trading partners. Now, I know that that's a bit of a bluff because you want to level out the playing field for the United States. And however, it's not a good idea and it's not the way that should probably be done. And it's going to end up hurting us more than it's helping, right? And to an extent, it's a bluff because as we seen in Colombia, you know, the president was like, I'm not taking these prisoners. You're not going to send them back here as if they're prisoners. They're humans. 48 hours later, he folded, right? Um, the president of Mexico, which I also think she's extremely intelligent. There was a bluff where he was saying, I'm going to put a 25% tariff on Mexico for all incoming goods because the increase of fentanyl and immigration. Now, majority of the fentanyl is coming through shipping containers from China. It's actually not even crossing the border. And those who are majority getting caught crossing the border with fentanyl are white Americans. They're not actually the immigrants coming over here with the drugs. Now, doing business with the cartel and shipping in drugs has been an American way for Chiquita Bananas, right? Um, and even beforehand, even your department that the government agency that's now about to be dismantled, quote unquote, was funding war with drugs. And again, that affected us. Um, but I think that was more of a call to attention to the issues that he has versus him actually following through with the tariffs. Now, for Canada, in December, before our previous administration left, they both signed a $900 million deal to increase border security between Canada and the United States. So for you to turn around and then put a tariff on them is something that I can't understand, right? And the Canadian people and the Canadian government are extremely empathetic to Americans because we're like, we didn't sign up for none of this shit. We just wanted lower eggs. And even those who did vote for him, I believe majority of them didn't sign up for their shit either. It's just that they saw that the cost of living underneath the last administration was getting to a point where they could not afford to eat, could not afford to live, and still wanted to work a regular 9 to 5 job to do so. Now, everybody in the house, including the 15 and the 16-year-old, now have to go to work so that way everybody can make ends meet. That is the issue. However, putting a 25% tariff on our two largest trading partners does not help that. That's again why I wanted to speak to the individuals who thought this was a good idea and then realized that it wasn't. Um, the reason why the Chinese tariffs are only 10% is because we already have tariffs in place from the Obama administration, right? That's why you don't have Chinese phones and we don't have Chinese electric cars. Because one, we wanted to even out the playing field with the companies that would lag behind in technology in comparison to them. And I was speaking specifically to Tesla, i.e., Elon Musk, where these electric vehicles over there are longer range and they are half the price. And if you with a really good warranty, who gives a fuck about the quality, right? Not when you're paying 15,000 versus 30,000, and then the quality of his vehicles are shit too. So would I pay $15? Would I pay $15,000 for shit, or would I pay $30,000 for shit with an Elon badge on it? You know, um, which I also feel like, and I'm going into a tangent here. It also creates a level of laziness for American companies because there's no competition, right? There is no immediate competition to Elon Musk right now with Tesla. None. Not Rivian, not BMW, not Mercedes, not other smaller startups, not GM, damn sure not Ford. And the Japanese brands are sticking with hybrid. Nissan, with their introduction into electric, they're not even going to be around in the next 24 months because of their financial woes. So there is no competition in regards to electric cars to Tesla, and that's why he's allowed to be shitty. But coming back, right? Um, those were the tariffs that were already in place, along with the reason, like I said before, why you don't have Chinese phones. Um, but now touching into the United States government. I understand that it is extremely efficient. Like bureaucracy takes too long. You can see it in the infrastructure projects. The reason why California's rail is taking so long is because of bureaucracy, right? Um, it's a lot easier for Brightline as a private company to build its high speed rail, and it's probably going to be done at least 10 years prior, 10, 15 years prior. And I can bet my best dollar on that before California finishes its high speed rail. Um, and that has nuance, right? It's covering more ground, it's covering more terrain, there's a lot more factors, but I guaranteed you the reason why it's overpriced and the reason why it's taking so long is because of bureaucracy. Something that China does not have to go through because there's essentially one government, which is best for the Chinese people. Um, is public transportation, right? And infrastructure. And that's what they were fitting to do. And that's also something that the United States did, right? In the 40s when we were creating the highway system. It was eminent domain. Now that shit was racist as hell, but long-term benefits for the country overall, I believe will have the same effects as we are getting high-speed rail. And then I'm not understanding why is this such a hard concept to take off, because in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, during that gilded age, that's what railroad was, right? Getting goods and services and people across the country before the airline industry really took off. And that didn't come until the 60s and the 70s, right? Where the ultra wealthy weren't the only ones flying. Um, it's just bureaucracy is wasteful. However, giving that to the hands of an immigrant is irony within itself. You gave it to a South African billionaire to streamline the government. So he's going to be responsible for that. As you're as you are a narcissist, I thought you wanted to take credit for that. Um, Obviously not. But for you to want to hammer down on illegal immigrants and even legalized immigrants, because the way he's rounding up actual U.S. citizens or those who have work visas, mistaking them for illegally crossing the border is absolutely insane. Putting a freeze on all new applications, and I get that, right? As we're trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward, but then on the other end, we're trying to modify the 14th Amendment with an executive order as if that was supposed to do anything. Now, maybe he was just testing his hand, and seeing how far his power will go, and how the Republicans will fall in line. But yeah, you can't repeal or modify a constitutional amendment with an executive order, you guys. You can't do it. Um, I also understood what he meant by the 14th Amendment was originally for Black people. It was originally for slaves that were freed and then their children to be citizens along with themselves, right? That came after the 13th Amendment. And however, he now feels like that is being used to usher in a new generation of immigrants coming from the south of the border. However, this same amendment was used for the influx of Europeans through Ellis Island. So it was cool when white people did it, but it's not cool when the brown people are now trying to do it, right? Um, and I actually met a couple of individuals who aren't US citizens and who work and now are in fear of deportation because we don't know what the hell he's fitting to do come Monday. Um, in regards to immigration or this as a whole. But back to the federal government, moving on to my next point, him dismantling the CIA. So I have done a bit of research, right? As another really fat government agency. I get that you can hire, the private sector to do essentially the same role as the United States government. But at the end of the day, these are still private companies. These are still for profit private companies. So, in a sense, because they are for profit and they're trying to win these government contracts, they are going to be able to do this more efficiently. But however, you have sensitive information in the hands of those who are only set out to make money. And I can see how that would backfire. There's no allegiance, right, to the United States government if all shit broke loose. Um, and I'm pretty much sure that there's contracts behind that and there's this, that, and the third, but things can change. Like it would give, I mean, the United States citizens sense of safety knowing that those secrets, good, bad, or indifferent, are underneath a government agency and not in Amazon, if that makes sense. Um, Dismantling the Department of Education, moving on to that, uh, if you guys didn't know, the Department of Education was created in 1979, right? There is a lot that the Department of Education does on very little. And one of those things is trying to even the playing field across different states in regards to the basis of education, right? Prior to 1979, those who are disabled and suffer from intellectual disabilities, there was no universal guideline for special education or education for ADA children, right? Um, and once that got enacted, it helped with specialized funding for those kids. And that's not even talking about race. We're just talking about the less than 1% in this country that is disabled that we have a moral obligation to take care of. Where does that funding go? Because New York can support that. The state of Maryland, even with a $3 billion deficit, can support that. California can support that, but can states like Mississippi, Alabama, and West Virginia continue to fund their special needs programs without any Department of Education oversight? And if they do decide to dismantle that, you need to get rid of the motherfucking student loans too, because that was a fucking trap for black and brown people. Either we took on a mass amount of debt from the fucking federal government or we went to serve the federal government in the military. So how about you do us one and get rid of that, right? Since we want to roll back DEI too. And I know that's not related, but what I'm saying is if you want to take one, you better take all of it. Um, Furthermore, I get that in his point that we rank 40th, right, in all countries in regards to education. However, we are number one in pupils per spent, right? There are other homogeneous countries that have a lot lower spending per pupil. However, like I said before, these countries like Norway, like Sweden, like Denmark, these countries are also 98% their own people. This is not the basis of this country. We have a lot more diversity here, right? We were always the melting pot. The white people that don't want the brown people here don't belong here either. The Dominican that comes from the Spanish speaking household in the South Bronx will not learn the same way as the English speaking uh lower middle class white male in West Virginia. They're going to be two completely different learning styles, right? Just like the black boy in the inner city of Baltimore is not learning the way the black boy in Montgomery County is learning. It's two different learning styles because they have two different experiences. They come from two different cultures. And I understand that those other countries, have different socioeconomic levels as well. But again, it's 98% white. And I'm exaggerating, but again, over 90% white, over 90% their people. It's not a mixing pot. So if you decided to go over there, you are not implementing your cultures and traditions into their government systems, into their school systems, right? You're going to assimilate to what they're already learning. The United States doesn't really have that, right? And at least it was a good attempt for the Department of Education to try to find a silver lining within that. But now that you're trying to roll that back, you're going to see talent still come from out of California. You're going to see talent still coming from out of New York, and you're going to see not as much coming from the poorer states. And let's be real, right? The hardest cycle to get out of is poverty, right? And to escape those those circumstances coming from either those southern states or those inner cities. um it's just going to be really difficult, and it's now going to make it even more difficult because these states now have to fund that education solely by themselves. If there are still towns in the south that burn trash in the center of the city, what the hell? If you think that they can't provide waste management services without burning trash in the middle of the city like that, you think they're going to be able to upgrade those books every 3 years? Do you think that they're going to allocate that funding correctly across all districts? Right? even districts that are minority, not a fucking chance. I do have some level of optimism about this administration. Yikes, I do. Right, I'm hoping that every time he gets in office, it forces people to pay attention more to politics and get more active with their representatives and their local government, so that way they can continue to, fight the injustices and get the goods and services that the government is supposed to provide for them. um yeah, that's just me wrapping that up there. I hope you guys are going to be all right. You guys will be all right. I hope you guys are okay. I, i'm I'm all right. Hopefully, as one of those workers that will be affected, we will see when the time comes. But yeah, this has been Talks with Antoine. Peace.